Welcome to the news at 10, reaching you live on NTA News 24. I am Muslima Sholebo.
And I'm Elizabeth Umorime. Thanks for joining us on the news today. Now let's take the headlines.
As NCDC announces 315 new cases of COVID-19, PTF reviews national response after the index case.
President Muhammad Buhari nominates Justice Monica Dongba Mensem as President Court of Appeal.
IGP unveils COVID-19 regulations for security agencies.
We had issues of group of people seizing the opportunity to commit one form of crime or the other. This handbook is also addressing such situations when it arises under the COVID-19 pandemic situation.
And House Committee on Reformatory Institutions launches ongoing 3,000 capacity maximum custodial center in Abuja.
The Nigeria Center for Disease Control has reported 315 new cases of COVID-19 as at midnight of the 8th of June 2020. The breakdown of the figures show that Lagos has 128 new cases, FCT has 34, Rivers 32, Edo 28, Oyo 22, Kaduna 20, and Gombe has 13 new cases. Others are Ogun State and Delta, and Kwara 7 each. Plateau and Kano have 5 each, while Bauchi has 4 and Katsina State has 2 new cases. As at now, Nigeria recorded 12,801 cases of COVID-19, with 4,040 of them discharged, while 361 patients have died. Nigeria is leveraging on the COVID-19 pandemic to improve the nation's healthcare system and infrastructure.
Chairman of the Presidential Task Force, Boss Mustafa, while reviewing the national response, says molecular laboratories have been increased from 2 to 30 within 100 days since the first index case was confirmed on the 27th of February this year. Mitari Ikmin reports.
For the Presidential Task Force, building the nation's capacity to respond to COVID-19 and other infectious diseases was part of the strategy that characterized 100 days of national response.
The number of laboratories in the COVID-19 network has increased from the bare minimum of 2 with which the Nigerian Center for Disease Control started with to 30. Over 80,000 tests have been conducted in the country. Over 13,000 health workers have been trained, increasing the human resource available for case management. The number of beds available for isolation and case management has increased from 3,000 beds to about 5,000 beds nationwide.
The Minister of Health and the Director General of the NCDC updated the nation on the outcome of investigations into the mysterious deaths in Kano, as well as the rising cases in Abia.
The verbal autopsy that we spoke of revealed that about 56% of the deaths had occurred at home, while 38 were in a hospital. The investigation suggests that 50 to 60% of the deaths may have been triggered by or due to COVID-19.
The rise in number of cases in Abia. We know people in the southeast travel a lot, so there was no reason why there wouldn't be more cases there, given the tendency to travel. So from the very beginning, we were always worried about insufficient data coming out from the southeast. Initially, it was thought to be about testing, but we've improved the testing, access to testing capacity now.
Protocols are being fine-tuned ahead of the resumption of evacuation of Nigerians abroad.
The key part of the proposal is that there will be a need for Nigerians that are currently outside the country to undergo a PCR test for COVID-19 before they board. These tests need to be valid at least for 14 days. In other words, if the test is done beyond 14 days, then it will not be accepted.
Before the industry comes back, we would inform the public, we would sensitize the public. We want to assure people the civil aviation will be extremely very safe.
I'm happy to say that we have about 3.6 million individuals, households that are currently in the National Social Register.
The public is advised to disregard speculations on school resumption on social media, as no date has been fixed yet.
We want to be only able to open when it is safe to do so. There's no way we can open our schools if teachers can't come. So we are looking at somewhere after these interstate lockdowns are lifted.
With the coronavirus pandemic far from over, state governments were urged to provide adequate security around isolation and treatment centers to avoid abscondment of patients. In Abuja, Mitaire Ikpen, NTA News.
And in the meantime, the House of Representatives Committee on Public Accounts has engaged the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 on management of funds and other activities of the PTF. National Assembly correspondent Lami Ali tells you more about this.
The Public Accounts Committee, which is statutorily responsible for probing how public funds are expended, says the federal government has made available funds to effectively tackle COVID-19, and the committee wants to ensure accountability. Chairman of the committee, Representative Wolioke, says the House is aware of presidential approvals to the PTF, including funding from various sources like development partners.
We also want to have an idea of what has come in, both in terms of cash, goods, equipment, or support in whatever form. We want to have a global and holistic, understanding of appreciation of what has come in.
The Director General of the Nigeria Center for Disease Control and other members of the PTF explained that part of the 5.6 billion naira approved by the federal government has been expended, while the balance is in an account domiciled with the Central Bank of Nigeria.
So far, the federal government of Nigeria has released 2 tranches of funds to NCDC. One was a preparedness release before the outbreak hit Nigeria of 620 million naira. In addition, this is also public knowledge, 5 billion naira was released to NCDC to enable response activities.
We're still waiting for the different MDAs to do their activity plans, their work plans. They need to submit a procurement plan to us, and then they go ahead to do the procurement, which is why out of the 22 billion that has been released for the purpose of COVID, only 164 has been spent.
The PTF urged the lawmakers to further educate Nigerians on the need for them to come forward voluntarily for testing, stressing that non-pharmaceutical measures are necessary to contain the spread of the virus. The committee will, in subsequent sittings, hear from the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs and the Office of the Accountant General of the Federation, among others. From the National Assembly, Lami Ali, NTA News.
And health workers are to receive their April and May COVID-19 hazard allowances this week, as the capturing aspect responsible for the delay in payment has been resolved.
The timeline for the payment was reached by Ministers of Labour and Health after a crucial meeting with health workers in Abuja. Emmanuel Ayimir reports.
The memorandum of understanding reached in April this year by the federal government with health workers to pay new hazard allowances to cushion the effects of COVID-19 is now being transmitted to a memorandum of action as government retained all COVID-19 hazard allowances for various categories of health workers. A development that brought smiles on the faces of health workers at this meeting.
The issues or rumors that is going to be reduced is no longer tenable. I mean, it's been clarified by the Honorable Minister of Labour that there is nothing like that and that we are going to be duly paid. In less than 2 weeks, certainly, we know a lot will make Bangam.
Both ministers of Labour and Health assured health workers that government will keep to its side of the bargain.
Hopeful that government will get some other funds to pay for June. Thereafter again, we'll look at July, August, and September.
The issue of communicating the specific decisions at this meeting to the institutions or health institutions affected in respect of medical workers who are retiring at this point in time, rather than going out there seeking for volunteers, those who are already in the system can be accommodated to help at this trying time.
Apart from the COVID-19 hazards allowances, which was reviewed upward, the employees' compensation scheme for workers who sustained injuries or infectious diseases and a life insurance package have been reactivated to encourage workers at the front line. Emmanuel Ayemiro, NTA News.
And the federal government is set to put in place a new protocol for safety and security for all as domestic flights are due to begin by the end of June.
Minister of Information and Culture, Lai Mohammed, stated this in his address to the 63rd meeting of the UNWTO Commission for Africa. Anthony Forson tells us more.
For us in Africa, after the pandemic, focusing on rural tourism will help speed up the recovery process in the travels and tourism sector.
The virtual meeting had African ministers of culture and tourism participating. The meeting focused on mitigating the negative impact of COVID-19 and how to rise above board and strengthening the sector in a post-COVID-19 era. It is in this line that Information and Culture Minister Lai Mohammed chronicled the Nigerian experience and how the Nigerian government is handling the situation. Lai Mohammed said, while there is no clear indication on how the world has changed, the ability to adapt and recover fast is a pointer to the resilience which the travel and tourism sector must leverage on now.
The sector is a driver of growth and economic prosperity, accounting for 1 in every 10 jobs globally. The employment opportunities provided by the sector benefit a wide variety of people, especially the low-skilled, the youth and women.
The minister enumerated palliatives put in place to cushion the impact of the disease on the entire populace, as well as policies put in place to aid businesses to grow.
This is because rural tourism employs more people in Africa. And here I'm talking about arts, crafts, culture, and heritage. It is, however, imperative for the UNWTO to support Africa with a Marshall Plan of sorts and grants.
The federal government of Nigeria, the minister added, is not resting on its oars to ensure that Nigerians live well and stay safe. In their submission, Chairman of CAF, Ronald Chitotela, and the Secretary General of the United Nations World Tourism Organization, Zura Pololikashvili, enumerated the depth of the impact of COVID-19 on the tourism sector and called on member states to rise up to the challenge by putting in place necessary mechanisms that will propel an instant recovery of the sector after what has been lost within the lockdown and travel restrictions. The 63rd UNWTO Regional Commission for Africa meeting was scheduled to hold in Victoria, Seychelles, in February this year before it was suspended as a preventive measure amidst COVID-19 outbreak. In Abuja, Anthony Forson, NTA News.
Let's now shift attention to security. President Muhammadu Buhari has commended the joint strikes being recorded by the Nigerian Army in the ongoing counterinsurgency operations as efforts intensify in making Boko Haram a thing of the past.
And that is right. The president stated this while granting audience to the Chief of Army Staff, Lieutenant General Tukur Yusuf Buratai, who for the first time made public the casualty figures on the side of the terrorists. Details with our State House correspondent, Adamu Sambo.
For over 2 months, the Army Chief, Lieutenant General Tukur Buratai, had been in the front line with officers and soldiers committed to putting an end to the menace of Boko Haram and other criminal elements in the northeast. He is here to give President Muhammadu Buhari details on the military operations, achievements recorded so far, and the next plan of action.
The truce morale is very high, while in the field some of them are even ready to stand between me and the bullet. They're ready to take the bullet for me. So I'm very much impressed and happy with my officers and soldiers. So far, over 1,429 of these Boko Haram terrorists have been neutralized, and we have arrested over 116 Boko Haram terrorist informants, their spies, and their couriers on logistics, and their coordinators in the villages, in towns, and even in the forests. Our intelligence corps, along with the Department of State Services, and of course, our good friends, the civilian JTF, have worked very hard to see that this is achieved.
President Muhammadu Buhari described as fulfilling that efforts made so far in the renewed fight against terrorism and insurgency have paid off, and applauded the troops for exhibiting high sense of courage and patriotism.
As far as the operation in the Northeast, Mr. President is happy, highly elated, and this is an encouragement to me and the troops. And I urge them to maintain this high standard of operational capability, so that not only in the Northeast, other troops in the other areas are also will do the same. Just like what is happening in the Northwest. The troops are determined. We are giving them the necessary support. We are reinforcing the troops in the Northwest. We are also getting more equipment for them to operate with. The overall plan is to rid the whole of the Northwest, and of course, emerging threats that are coming up in the in other parts of the country, especially the North Central, and of course, South, West, Southeast, and the South. So it's a comprehensive approach to tackle any insecurity that is emerging.
The Nigerian Army, Lieutenant General Buratai, however, said will continue to synergize with other services and security agencies in the task of securing Nigeria for effective service delivery. From the State House, Adamu Sambu, NTA News.
And still on security matters, as part of measures to foster more harmonious working relationship between the police and the citizens in the enforcement of COVID-19 guidelines,
the Inspector General of Police, Mohammed Adamu, has unveiled operational guidelines and regulations for the Niger Police and other law enforcement agencies. In Abuja, Francis Fong reports.
The increased reported cases of domestic violence, many say, are linked to the COVID-19 restrictions. Deepening respect for the right of citizens, as well as providing new set of policing tools for tackling domestic violence, rape, child molestation, and other gender-based incidents are now on the stream, courtesy of the Nigeria Police. The Inspector General of Police, Mohammed Adamu, says the recent unfortunate developments prompted the introduction of these operational guidelines to coordinate and reshape the conduct of personnel and other law enforcement agencies in the lines of operations.
We had issues of group of people seizing the opportunity to commit one form of crime or the other. This handbook is also addressing such situations when it arises under the COVID-19 pandemic situation.
The IGP has also ordered strengthening of the Gender Desk Unit and the juvenile welfare centers across the country, and the deployment of investigative assets to deal with gender-related offenses. In addition, the IGP equally directs the Force Provost Department, X-Squad, the Public Relations Department, the Complaint Response Unit, and the Public Complaint Bureau to carry out oversight roles of adequate evaluation and monitor officers to ensure compliance with the guidelines. In Abuja, Frank Sisfom, NTA News.
Still on security, the Nigerian military says the air component of Operation Hadarin Daji has destroyed an armed bandit camp at a forest in Zamfara State. In a statement by Coordinator, Directorate of Defense, Media Operations, Major General John Enenche, the feat was achieved in the ongoing Operation Accord on the 7th of June 2020, after human intelligence reports and series of intelligence missions established the hideout of the armed bandits in their notorious kingpin, Dogu Gede. With this confirmation, the air component dispatched attack aircraft and helicopter gunships to engage the location, leading to the destruction of the hideout as well as the neutralization of several of the armed bandits. The Chief of the Air Staff commends the air component of Operation Hadarin Daji for their professionalism.
And you're still watching the news at 10 on NTA News 24, reaching you live from Abuja. Still ahead.
House Committee on Reformatory Institutions launched ongoing 3,000 capacity maximum custodial center in Abuja. Details when we return after the break.
For now, the best and most efficient way to avoid getting infected is through regular hygienic and sanitary practices, as well as social distancing. As individuals, we remain the greatest weapon to fight this pandemic. By washing our hands regularly with clean water and soap, disinfecting frequently used surfaces and areas, coughing into a tissue or elbow, and strictly adhering to infection prevention control measures in health facilities, we can contain this virus.
It's good to have you back with us. Now, reactions have continued to trail rampant cases of rape across the country. The recent is the Ministry of Women Affairs, who are demanding justice for victims of rape and murder. Momso Damian Diati has more.
Call it a harvest of rape, and you may be right. First, it was Vera Omozwa, a 100-level student of the University of Benin in Edo State. Then, 12-year-old girl in Jigawa State said to be abused by 11 men. How about 18-year-old Barakat, who was raped and murdered in Ibadan? Or is it the other 12-year-old in Lagos, amongst many other cases?
Their souls and the souls of all the faithful departed rest in peace.
Such occurrences, the Ministry of Women Affairs say, must stop, hence the adoption of new measures to tackle the menace.
This is not acceptable. The rape of babies, toddlers, adolescent girls, and women of all ages has reached an embarrassing and alarming rate that needs urgent steps to be taken to properly address the hydra-headed pandemic that threatens our country's beautiful image in the Committee of Nations. And an urgent need to act is now, and this is highly recommended.
Against this backdrop, the ministry is flagging of activities to mark the Day of the African Child with the theme, Access a Child Justice System in Africa, to drum home the message and measures of dealing with rape cases. In Abuja, Momso Damian Diati, NTA News.
And the House of Representatives Committee on Reformatory Institutions has expressed satisfaction with ongoing construction of the 3,000 capacity maximum custodial center in Abuja.
Chairman of the committee, Anayo Edwin, gave the commendation after an oversight visit by committee members to the site in Karshi, an outskirt of the FCT. Victor Azu reports.
More often than not, when a legislative committee visits a construction site, it is for oversight purposes, as it is in this case. The Controller General of the Nigerian Correctional Service is unavoidably absent, so the task of receiving the members falls on Deputy Controller General of Corrections in charge of human resources. He brings them up to speed on the project.
A total of 46 projects was awarded to indigenous companies
after due process and due diligence was carried out on them. Thereafter, 5 additional projects were later awarded, thereby bringing the total number of projects awarded to 51.
The 3,000 capacity custodial center is beginning to take shape here in Abuja, and this is expected to be replicated in the 6 geopolitical zones of the Federation. When all of these are completed, they will represent the new face of the Nigerian Correctional Service. This explains the visit of the House Committee on Reformatory Institutions. With more than 4 billion naira already expended, the legislator's task is to assess if this main structure and other complementary ones represent value for money. After a rigorous tour of the project, they have this to say.
We are happy with what is on ground to make sure that they release their funds as when due.
And we also thank the authorities of correctional services for awarding it to our indigenous contractors.
This project, when completed in the 6 geopolitical zones of the Federation, will help decongest the overcrowded correctional facilities across the country. In Abuja, Victor Azu, NTA News.
And now to legal matters. A Federal Capital Territory High Court sitting in Apo has declared as illegal the continued stay of Peter Ame as the chairman of the Inter-Party Advisory Council following the deregistration of 74 political parties by INEC. The court affirms Leonard Nzenwa as the interim chairman of the IPAC on grounds that the action of the 18 existing political parties remain valid and cannot be voided. Justice Binta Mohammed held that the membership of Peter Ame to the IPAC is tied to his party's membership of the council.
Still on the judiciary, President Muhammadu Buhari, in line with his constitutional responsibility, has sent the nomination of Her Lordship Justice Monica Dongbam Mensem, Acting President, Court of Appeal, to the Senate for confirmation as President Court of Appeal. A statement by the Senior Special Assistant to the President on Media and Publicity, Garba Shehu, indicates that Justice Dongbam Mensem is a 7th Justice of the Court of Appeal and was recommended as in the practice by the National Judicial Council for the nomination by the President.
And Plateau State Governor and Chairman Northern Governors Forum Simon Bako Lalong has congratulated Archbishop of the Catholic Archdiocese of Jos, Nigeria, His Grace Most Reverend Dr. Matthew Ishaya Audu, on his 61st birthday. A statement by Director of Press and Public Affairs to the Governor of Plateau State, Dr. Makut Simon Macham, indicates that Governor Lalong, in a congratulatory message, described the Archbishop as an epitome of humility, selflessness, and godliness. While wishing him Almighty God's protection and good health, Governor Lalong said the people of Plateau State, particularly Catholics, are happy to have him in the state again after his early years of service on the plateau. In another development, Governor Lalong has also congratulated Her Lordship Justice Monica Dongbam Mensem, Acting President, Court of Appeal, over her nomination by President Muhammadu Buhari to the Senate for confirmation as substantive President Court of Appeal. Lalong, who had on Sunday during the church service to mark the 2020 Democracy Day and the 5th year in office at the Government House Chapel in Jos, asked citizens of the state to pray for her confirmation, expressing appreciation to the president for doing the needful. He also expressed belief that with her pedigree, she's going to do the nation and Plateau State, her family and the judiciary proud by upholding the tenets of justice, truth and integrity. Governor Lalong also thanked the National Judicial Council for recommending her and wished her well as she prepares to undergo screening at the Senate, saying he has no fear at all that she will give a good account of herself as she has done in the past. He also called on senators representing Plateau State at the Red Chamber to give her all the necessary support needed to have a smooth screening exercise.
And in other news, President Muhammadu Buhari will put a temporary hold to the gazetting of the Executive Order 10, which he recently signed, giving autonomy to state legislature and the judiciary. Chairman of the Nigerian Governors Forum, Ekiti State Governor Dr. Kayode Fayemi, after a meeting at the presidential villa in Abuja between some governors and the Minister of Finance, Zainab Ahmed, and the Attorney General of the Federation, Abubakar Malami. Governor Fayemi says, after listening to their concerns about about the constitutionality of the executive order at an earlier meeting. President Buhari agreed that the gazetting of the order will be delayed. He says that the governors have also been consulting with the Conference of Speakers of State Legislatures in order to work out an amicable resolution of the matter.
We've met with the president before now on it, and the president was very pleased that for us as governors, we are all united in our support for the autonomy of the judiciary and the legislature. That's the position of the 36 governors of the Federation. What is at issue is the constitutionality of the modalities of what had been put in the executive order. And Mr. President was gracious enough to say, okay, given your concerns about that, we will delay the gazetting of the order and allow you and the Attorney General and the Honorable Minister for Finance, Planning and Budget to work out the modalities. And in any case, we have been meeting at our level with the Conference of Speakers.
State House correspondent Jide Onifade reports that the Chief of Staff to the President, Ibrahim Gambari, hosted the meeting, which was also attended by Governor Aminu Tambuwal of Sokoto State and his Kebbi State counterpart, Abubakar Atiku Bagudu.
And now to some business. Experts say sustainable employment of industrial labor will revamp the economy of the nation beyond the threshold of the possibility of the economy going into recession. Kolo Mohammed will bring you up to speed on that and more.
Many thanks for having you along. The continued active productivity of industries ensure jobs protection, reduced inflation threshold, and decline anxiety over the possibilities of the economy going into recession. The federal government of Nigeria is working to ensure economic return in the post-COVID era even better than as it were. The monetary policy rate now stands at 12.50% from 13.50%. 500 billion naira fiscal stimulus funding to industry operators has been made available, and the 3.4 trillion naira Central Bank of Nigeria and Bankers Committee towards revamping national economy. These experts believe will ensure sustainable employment of labor, boost industry production capacity, as increased population will in turn mitigate price movements, which will create conducive ecosystem in infrastructure and services provided in divergent sectors of the economy.
Take the example of Kakuri in Kaduna. It was a whole city that was built by the textile industry. It is not just the textile workers that contributed to the economy of Kakuri. As the industries were functioning, there were people who were producing food for the workers. There were people who were selling clothes to the workers. There were people who were buying products from these factories. So it was a whole chain of activity that was not just helping the workers working in those test factories. It was helping the community, and it was helping the entire state of Kaduna. It's a complete goal of its own. But we believe that with the appropriate intervention and policies of government, we can recreate that.
Let's see where the weeks opening the activity on the floor of equities market placed market indices. In gratitude of having you along on Business News, I am Kolo Mohammed. Please do stay safe.
You're still watching the news at 10 on NTA News 24, reaching you live as usual from Abuja. We'll go on a short break now, but still to come.
Federal government declares Friday, June 12, 2020 as public holiday to mark this year's Democracy Day celebration. Details when we return.
The coronavirus, also known as COVID-19, is spreading at an alarming rate all over the globe, including Nigeria. With the number of infected persons in Nigeria increasing daily, prevention is better than cure. Coronavirus has no cure. The virus spreads from one person who affects two persons, and by the time the affected person is isolated, the two persons have affected four, and it keeps spreading. You must take preventive measures to save yourself and that of the people around you. Always wash your hands with soap and water. Put distance between yourself and others. Whenever you cough or sneeze, cover your mouth. Clean and disinfect surfaces. Stay at home if you're sick and contact the proper authorities. Together, we can cut down the spread of the coronavirus. This message is brought to you by the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA, Africa's largest TV network.
Welcome back. And there's some good news, and this time in the agricultural sector, as Nigeria will begin to export locally processed rice to some African countries by next year. Minister of Agriculture and Rural Development, Mohammed Sabo Nanono, stated this in Kaduna at the flag-off of distribution of agricultural imports to farmers amidst coronavirus pandemic. Ahmed Umar Kudan has more.
Before the Buhari administration in 2015, many Nigerians were doubtful of the capacity of the country to feed herself. This narrative has since changed, with the country's domestic rice production capacity hitting 3.7 million metric tons annually, promoting self-sufficiency, economic growth, and job creation. Minister of Agriculture and Rural Development, Mohammed Sabo Nanono, says the distribution of the agricultural input to smallholder farmers aims at reducing the effect of COVID-19 on agricultural production in Nigeria.
Since the smallholders are the most vulnerable, it becomes imperative for government to support them with much needed input, especially seeds, which is the most important factor that influences farmers' yield in order to enable them to recover quickly from the effect of pandemic.
Governor Nasir Ahmad El-Rufai says Kaduna State is committed to creating safer environment for farming.
The war against bandits and kidnappers continues unabated. We don't negotiate with bandits.
And unless we come to grips with mechanization, we will not be able to shoulder the challenges that the population of this country places on us.
Some of the inputs will be distributed free of charge to farmers, while others will be sold at subsidized rate. In Kaduna, Ahmad Umar Kudan, NT News.
Still talking agriculture, the federal government is set will not rest on its ass at ensuring that food sufficiency is achievable even as COVID-19 pandemic continues to spread.
This is done through the provision of agricultural inputs to farmers across the country. The ceremony was flagged off in Jigawa State. Ilyasu Ali Yakubu has more.
With the commencement of the 2020 farming activities across the country in earnest, even in the mix of COVID-19, there is the hope that the 2020 farming season may experience a bumper harvest, going by the federal government's determined effort at ensuring food sufficiency in the country, with the commencement of distribution of fertilizers to farmers affected by floods across the country. Minister of Humanitarian Affairs, Disaster Management and Social Development, Sadia Umar Farouk, performed the flag-off ceremony in Dutse, Jigawa State.
We appreciate this government's gesture.
This fertilizer distribution, therefore, constitutes the final phase of the input distribution aimed at helping the farmers recover from losses suffered. It is also intended as a poverty alleviation strategy, which will in turn empower our people economically.
Available records show that in the 2018 flood disaster that affected about 250,000 farmers across the country, Jigawa State was considered most affected, with more than 70,000 farmers in the disaster, and about 80,000 hectares of farmlands are said to have been washed away. The sharing formula, as adopted by the National Emergency Management Agency, NEMA, shows that farmers that produces maize, rice, pepper, groundnut, and cowpea gets 9 bags of the fertilizer each, while that of millet gets 5 bags. Guinea corn, 6 bags, and sesame seed, 4 bags in the northern parts of the country. The minister, who was accompanied by the Director General of NEMA, Air Vice Marshal Mohammed, also performed a similar exercise in Katsina State. Governors of Jigawa and that of Katsina State commended the federal government for the initiative and described the gesture as timely. The exercise continues in all affected states of the country. From Duze in Jigawa State, Ilyasu Ali Yakubu, NTA News.
This time, the Apex Policy Think Tank in Nigeria, the National Institute for Policy and Strategic Studies, NIPS Kuru, has been on lockdown, restricting all visitors except participants of the senior executive course.
Director General NIPS, Professor Habu Galadima, spoke with Sani Ibn Salihu on how the institute has been navigating its programs in spite of the coronavirus pandemic.
The 78 senior executive course 42 participants who are responding to President Muhammadu Buhari's directives to provide high-level policy advice to government on Nigeria's population growth and human capital development were not deterred by the emergence of COVID-19.
We quickly established a COVID-19 task force here in the National Institute, and so we constituted them, and they've been monitoring events, forecasting and responding to those developments. And so since then, a protocol was established in the National Institute that mirrors the advice of WHO and the Presidential Task Force.
Through a robust partnership with the Development Research and Project Center Abuja, NIPS has been able to carry out its mandate of providing strategic policy direction to government response on human capital development.
There is Partnership for Advocacy in Child and Family Health at Scale, PACFA, and we have worked so hard in contributing immensely to the health sector in this country.
As the senior executive course 42 is halfway through, the nation is rest assured of homegrown response to our societal challenges. In Jos, Fran Ibn Saleh, NTA News.
And away from NIPS now to education, where the Joint Admissions and Matriculation Board says the candidates who sat the 2020 edition of the Unified Tertiary Matriculation Examination, UTME, will soon know the cutoff marks of the different courses they applied for.
Head of Public Affairs of JAMB, Fabian Benjamin, stated this in an exclusive interview with NTA News in Abuja. Olayinka Ojo reports.
To decide on cutoff mark for admission into tertiary institutions in Nigeria, a stakeholders policy meeting is usually held in large auditoriums with representatives from all tertiary institutions in the country and other key players in the education sector. The JAMB 2020 policy meeting to decide this year's cutoff marks will be a departure from the norm, as it will be virtually conducted due to COVID-19. While no new dates have been announced for the conduct of the Senior Secondary School Certificate Examination and that of National Examination Council, JAMB says the board will begin admission of new students for 2020-2021 academic session for candidates already with SSC and NECO results.
We will go ahead with the process and also see how things unfold. If we are lucky, or if the candidates are lucky, and the whole thing maybe goes down, the two examination body will conduct the exam and will be good to go.
The Minister of Education, Adamu Adamu, is expected to chair the JAMB 2020 policy meeting. Olayinka Ojo, NTA News.
And the federal government has declared Friday, June 12, 2020 as public holiday to mark this year's Democracy Day celebration. The Minister of Interior, Ralph Aregbesola, who made the declaration on behalf of the federal government, congratulates all Nigerians at home and abroad for the entrenchment of democracy and rule of law in the country. He commended the heroes of democracy for their doggedness and sacrifice, which eventually birthed democratic governance in Nigeria.
And Nigeria's 9th National Assembly has been called upon to ensure strict adherence to the rule of law on crucial legislative issues bordering on the well-being of its staff under the National Assembly Service Commission.
The call was made by the Coalition for Parliamentary Reforms during a press conference in view of the fundamental national issues around the legislative arm. National Assembly correspondent Abdullahi Aminu reports.
This is a gathering of representatives from various civil societies. They are here on the alleged attempt to tamper with the resolutions on the National Assembly service set by the 8th National Assembly. The compulsory retirement age of all employees in its payroll has increased from 60 years of age or 35 years of pensionable service to 65 years and 40 years under the new service conditions.
Number of parliamentary staff who allow themselves to be used to undermine the law should bear in mind that they are putting their interest at abeyance.
If a need is coming for such a review of the resolution, it must be followed by the procedures of the National Assembly.
We want the National Assembly to maintain its independence. We want its independence to be respected.
The press conference, according to the coalition, is to draw attention on the elementary knowledge that government is a continuum, hence the need for proper adherence to the rule of law in the alteration of any legislation. In Abuja, Abdullahi Aminu, NTA News.
The Senate Committee on Foreign Affairs has screened 8 career ambassadors nominated by President Muhammadu Buhari to represent Nigeria in 8 African countries. National Assembly correspondent Ignatius Nkwo reports.
The global lockdown of the airspace because of the COVID-19 pandemic affected the traditional way of carrying out parliamentary screening at the Senate, as the nominees could not physically appear before the Senate Committee on Foreign Affairs. But the legislative drill must go on. This time, the committee resorted to virtual communication screening. 8 nominees for African countries were screened.
And you are one of those that are really highly qualified.
Senior Special Assistant to the President on National Assembly Matters, Senate, Senator Babajide Omoworare, commended the process.
And it saves time, it saves money, it's the new normal, and they are quite articulate nominees, and I thank the Committee on Foreign Affairs for this opportunity.
Meanwhile, the Senate Committee on Science and Technology has met with the management of the Raw Materials Research and Development Council, during which the committee advised them to live up to its mandate.
We are increasing the alternatives or the substitutes for our raw materials that we import in this country.
Permit me to remind you that the Raw Material Research and Development Council is one of the key parastatals of the Federal Ministry of Science and Technology.
The meeting centered on the agency's activities between 2018 to date. From the National Assembly, Ignatius Nkwo, NTA News.
In the meantime, the Minister of State for Foreign Affairs, Ambassador Zubairu Dada, has denied a media report linking the ministry with an issue of inviting the Minister of Communications and Digital Economy over office allocation to Nigerians in Diaspora Commission. In a statement by spokesperson of the ministry, Ferdinand Nwoye, the minister says in his capacity, the supervisor of the Nigerians in Diaspora Commission invited the chairman of the commission to brief him while the Minister of Communications and Digital Economy volunteered for discussion, which the Minister of State declined because, as he says, the matter can be resolved amicably. The ministry applied to all parties to exercise restraint and avoid further media confrontation.
Meanwhile, last week, the social media was awash with stories that a new country to be called Ambazonia or Uno State is to be created out of Nigeria and Cameroon. The story said 24 local government areas in Nigeria will be ceded to be part of the purported country, and that it was part of the agreement reached between Nigeria and Cameroon in 2003. Now the National Boundary Commission has come out to debunk that report, saying it is false and there is no iota of truth in their story.
And now to some foreign news. Brazil reports 679 deaths from coronavirus with 15,654 new cases, plus North Korea to cut off all inter-Korean communication lines with the South. Now let's join Oyeyemi Ajayi for details.
Brazil has reported 679 deaths from coronavirus and 15,654 new cases amidst growing controversy over its data allegations of political manipulation. The head of the World Health Organization has urged countries to press on with efforts to contain the coronavirus. A modeling study from the Imperial College has found lockdowns in 11 countries in Europe probably averted approximately 3.1 million deaths from coronavirus. Now, North Korea has said it will cut off all inter-Korean communication lines with the South, including a hotline between the two nations' leaders. The North said this was the first in a series of actions describing the South Korea as its enemy. Daily calls, which have been made to a liaison office located in the North Korean border city of Kyeongsan, will cease from Tuesday. The two states had set up the office to reduce tensions after talks in 2018. North and South Korea are technically still at war because no peace agreement was reached when the Korean War ended in 1953.
Are you still watching the news at 10 on NTV News 24, live from Abuja? Here's a recap of some of our major stories.
As NCDC announces 350 new cases of COVID-19, PTA reviews national response after the index case.
President Buhari nominates Justice Monica Dongbam Mensem as President of Court of Appeal.
IGP unveils COVID-19 regulations for security agencies.
We had issues of group of people seizing the opportunity to commit one form of crime or the other. This handbook is also addressing such situations when it arises under the COVID-19 pandemic situation.
House Committee on Reformatory Institutions logs ongoing 3,000 capacity maximum custodial center in Abuja. Stay with us.
This is NTA News 24.
Now for some sports. Super Falcons captain Asisat Oshola makes Spanish Women's Football League team of the season, and Irish UFC former champion retires for a third time. Let's join our sports desk.